Hey guys, this is Dave Scott with the Fit by Design program, the weight loss program for Christian men over the age of 40. What we're going to talk about today are the two things that men over the age of 40 should focus on in their physical training. Now, before I get into this, let me say this with the caveat that if your specific goals differ from what I'm about to talk about, that's fine. If your healthcare practitioner, if your doctor has told you you need to work on these things, and whatever these things are different than the two things that I'm about to speak on, that's fine. Listen to your doctor, okay? But generally, painting with a broad brush, men over the age of 40 need to focus on two elements in their training. Number one, maintaining and improving their mobility. Number two, maintaining and possibly even increasing their lean muscle tissue. So let's unpack this here. Why mobility? Why is that the first one? And why is it even one of the two that I mentioned? When all of the other things like cardiovascular fitness and all of that are still part of the discussion here. Why mobility? As a guy over 40, I'm sure you have experienced that moment where you realize, I just don't move as good as I did at one point in time. And there's a lot of reasons for this. I don't believe that our mobility and our quality of movement have to degrade over time, but the reality of it is in our culture, as we get older, we generally tend to move less. And because we move less, and we move less in the way that we're designed to move, our ability to move, our quality of movement starts to degrade. If you move well, if you have good mobility and you have access to all of your joints' ranges of motion, everything else is on the table for you. Okay? If you want to be a cyclist and do century rides, and you have good mobility in your hips and your ankles, your knees aren't going to be a problem. Okay? If you like to go hiking, with your family, and your hips, your ankles, your back, your shoulders, all of those things move well, then there's nothing that's going to keep you from going on that hike, right? If you have small children or grandchildren, your ability to be able to get up and down off of the ground and interact with that small child is going to be dependent on your mobility. From an exercise perspective, if you have good mobility in your knees, your ankles, and your hips, and in your shoulders, then things like the barbell back squat aren't necessarily going to be off the table for you. See, if you can move well, if you have good mobility, that sets the table for you to do whatever it is you want to do. And ultimately, from a training standpoint, that's what this is about. We want to be able to have a good quality of life and be able to do the things that we want to do regardless of what the calendar says or regardless of what our driver's license says we are age-wise. And if you move well, that sets the table for you to do that. Okay, so that's number one, is maintaining and possibly even improving your mobility. Number two, maintaining and improving your lean muscle tissue. Carrying more muscle later into life is a great way to bulletproof yourself from a lot of the metabolic challenges that some of the older folks in our culture deal with. Things like diabetes, for instance. I come from a family of type 2 diabetics. Almost every one of the adults in my mother's side of the family, by the time they were my age, had been diabetics for double-digit years. At 48, I'm still fighting that off. I am not diagnosed as a diabetic, and all of my blood work, my A1Cs, all of that kind of stuff, tells me that that's not a concern. Carrying more lean muscle tissue helps to keep that at bay. okay? And the stronger I am, the more lean muscle tissue I carry, the stronger I'm going to be, the stronger things like my bone density is going to be. For men, we don't hear as much about things like bone density. The reality of it is, again, as our culture is becoming more and more sedentary, issues of bone density are becoming more prevalent in men as they get older as well. Let me share just a quick story with you. The last powerlifting meet that I entered, I was in my late 20s down in Richmond, Virginia, and I got to witness an older gentleman in his 70s walk out onto the platform and deadlift more than double his body weight. He wasn't wearing a belt, no suits, no wraps, just a pair of what looked like high school gym shorts, a t-shirt, and a pair of black top, high top Chuck Taylors. Calmly walked out there and picked up more than double his body weight. That gentleman, who I later found out was in his early 70s, I guarantee does not have issues with bone density. Not to mention he moved well, he had good posture, and he wasn't bent over the way you see a lot of folks in that age category are. Was he an anomaly? Maybe. But more so because he was still engaging in and continuing to keep strong. So, again, the two most important components of our training that we need to focus on after the age of 40. Number one, maintain your mobility, because that sets the table for everything and it allows you to do whatever it is you want to do. Number two, maintain that lean muscle tissue. Stay strong. It keeps your bones healthy, keeps your metabolism healthy, staves off a number of different metabolic diseases. And ultimately, both of those two things lead to a better quality of life, which is what we want from our training, from our nutrition, from our pursuit of health. So if you found this helpful, then do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you later.